Chronic Illness Therapist podcast. This is meant to be a place where people with chronic illnesses can come to feel heard, seen, and safe while listening to mental health therapists and other medical professionals talk about the realities of treating difficult conditions. This might be a new concept for you, one in which you never have to worry about someone inferring that it's all in your head. We dive deep into the human side of treating complex medical conditions and help you find professionals that leave you feeling hopeful for the future. I hope you love what you learn here, and please consider leaving a review or sharing this podcast with someone you love. Samantha Heuwagen is a Latinx marriage and family therapist and best-selling author in the metro Atlanta area. When not working with clients, she sparks discussion about mental health with the goal to spread awareness across the U.S. and beyond by challenging the popular discourse surrounding mental illness and making it more inclusive. Her books from the Starless series, Dawn Among the Stars, Fading Starlight, Stardust Emerging, and In the Wake of Stars are available now wherever books are sold. Her fifth book, Moonlit, will be available September 2022. Discover what it means to be human in this feminist science fiction series, where her debut novel was nominated for a 2019 Georgia Author of the Year award in the first novel category. You can connect with her on Instagram or TikTok at The Sci-Fi Therapist and at samanthaheuwagen.com. Hi, Samantha. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. You made me sound really cool with that bio. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was realizing I didn't actually mention that you are also a sex therapist, and that is what you're here to talk about today. Sex therapy, chronic pain, chronic illness, and some of the different intersections around that.
100%. I'm really excited.
Good. So maybe we can start with a little bit about what people come to you with when they're dealing with pain. What is kind of the first thing that comes up for you when you think about that question?
Yeah, I think about the clients that come in and they're like, something's wrong with my sex life. They don't ever say it like that, but they read between the lines. And the more digging you get, you realize that they're either living with pain, whether that be a physical pain or there's something up with their relationship with sex in general, their relationship to their body, like something's off. Nobody usually comes in with direct like medical or kind of like the awareness of what that looks like. So it's up to us as sex therapists to kind of peel back the layers and understand what that is and what that isn't. And so a lot of people will say they're in pain, but I don't know what that means. And it isn't until, asking more questions, embracing the curiosity, and then most times referring them out to other specialists, right? Because as a therapist, I don't have the power to prescribe medication. I wish I could run tests. That would be so helpful. I wish I could figure out what was going on behind the scenes like that, but we don't have that power here in the state of Georgia. I don't believe any therapist ever anywhere has that power, unfortunately. So then you have to refer out and kind of create this like team mentality to figure out exactly what the pain is, where is it coming from. And then I like to add, because we always think pain of physical is a physical thing, and it is, but also I call it like the ghost pain, right? So just because you have a medication and it's helped the pain, or you try something different and it's helped the pain, or you find out what the underlying thing was, doesn't mean that pain has just magically disappeared. Mentally, we hold that, that information. And so sometimes the brain takes it and goes, well, I'm feeling good right now, but it might come back. So that's kind of what I do. That's how I visualize the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer to kind of what our role is then in the therapy room. And it's managing the fear around pain.
Yes.
What do you do for people who are currently in pain still? So they either have been working with specialists or they haven't yet worked with one, and they're still dealing with this pain on a daily basis, but they're in a relationship, sex is really important to them, and they can't engage in the way that they want to. What are some of the things that you start to navigate with those clients?
One of my favorite things that came from my time teaching at Kennesaw State University was defining what actual sex is. So when you say it, when I say it, you and I are thinking about two different things. I want to say 9 times out of 10, most people are thinking of just penetration. Oh, sex is just some type of penetration. And I'm like, that's well and good. But like, if you're in pain or it doesn't feel like your body is able to go to that space, then that just kind of ruins, if you will, air quotes, ruins the time that you want to have in this sexual entity, this space, this vibe, whatever you want to define it. So when I define it with clients, we get really specific. I don't believe that sex is just the physicality. It could be the emotional. So then we need to figure out what sex represents. Is it a connection with your partner or partners? Is it something else? Is it a release? What is it? So if you're coming to me and there's pain associated with any kind of intercourse, then I want to know, what else is sex to you? Is it hand holding? Is there different levels? Is there's kissing? Is cuddling part of that? Is heavy petting part of that? I mean, I can go on and on. The list is endless because everybody's definition of sex is different. I always like to say it's like your definition, your partner's definition or partner's definitions, and then the couple's definition. So we need to all get on the same page. So if you go to your partner and you're like, I really want to be sexual, but I'm in pain or something doesn't feel right, then it's up to you and that person or persons to then get creative and figure out, okay, well then what are you comfortable with? What does work for what your body is like giving out right now? And I love that because it just demystifies one, what sex is, but then also puts everybody on an even playing field. So it's not just, oh, I want sex and everybody's like coming up with their own image and their own scenario about what that looks like. It's literally already defined. There's already some knowledge there, and you can use the toolbox metaphor that I like to use with my clients, which is that you put stuff in there. So one day you might be like, cuddling is enough, and so you pull cuddling out of that. But then another day it might be like, well, I would like cuddling and kissing and heavy petting and outer course, and that's enough. And then of course you can always add penetration, but I like to use the other stuff first because everybody always thinks about that. And they're always like, that's the only way to have sex. And it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not, y'all. The sky's the limit.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is the only thing that people associate sex with?
Oh my gosh, girl, you live in the same world that I do. Like, it's just, that's it. That's the message. That's the message that we get in media. That's the message that we get in books. That's the message that we get in pornography and any kind of that scape. Like, that's it. Like, you are there to have an orgasm. You're there to hit climax, whatever that looks like, whatever that feels like. And then you're done. That's it. It's so sad because it's more than one thing, but we don't live in that world. And I wish, gosh, with my whole heart, I wish that comprehensive sex ed was widely used and spread, because age appropriately we would learn that it's not just about that. It can be so many different things to different people, but we have to have the tools to communicate that and the understanding of what our bodies are doing and not doing to get to that place. I just went off on my little little pedestal. I'm so passionate about it. I wish we had that, but we don't.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Our sex ed is atrocious at best. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is there, especially given the current state of our climate right now and the anti-abortion laws that are coming out. I mean, this is where we're at right now. And so if that's where we're at, I can't even imagine then talking about, I can't even imagine our country being more on board with talking about comprehensive sex education. So, which is so ironic and terrible.
Yeah, there's so much fear associated with it. And honestly, there's nothing to fear with that. With comprehensive sex ed, it's age appropriate. And I can't stress that enough, right? So you're not going to be telling a 5-year-old about pornography. Instead, you would be telling them about the different types of families and good touch and bad touch, and that they have the consent and all of that.
Such important messages for a 5-year-old to know, right?
Yes, 100%. And you'd be giving them words about body parts. So let's say, God forbid, something happened to them. They would be able to communicate effectively to their caregiver, like if something happened, or if something made them uncomfortable, or if they had a question. Instead of shrouding everything in mystery and secrecy, it would be out on the table. It would be clear as day, and people would feel more supported. And I think that's why we have so many issues with sex and sexuality these days, is because it is, this like hidden thing that we can't talk about. And then we bring pain into it. Then it just adds more stigma, right? Because it's like, well, I'm supposed to be this sexual person, and this sexual person is just supposed to show up pain-free, and the body is supposed to work as it's supposed to work. And it's like, oh, nobody, come on. We're not robots. We're not perfect. Every sexual activity and I was about to say adventure. It could be adventure, I guess. We'll go with that. Is different because your body changes daily and your partner's bodies change daily and all of that. But, we don't live in that world, but we're trying.
No, that's such a good point about like your body changing daily that I think is really important, especially when you live with chronic pain, because So everybody's body changes daily. We
Mhm.
all feel good some days, don't feel good other days. And you're right, we have this expectation that we're supposed to feel exactly the same way. We're supposed to just be able to show up, do the thing, no matter how we feel, right? That's kind of the message we have with
Yeah.
everything in life. Like, you go to work no matter how you feel, you have sex no matter how you feel. Like, and so there's so much here, because what we were just talking about with comprehensive sex education early on, like kindergarten years, it sets the tone and sets the foundation for such good, healthy communication. And if you don't have that, how are you going to work through problems? Like, if you
Right.
can't even do that for like normal, for lack of a better word, normal, no issues, like you're just like no chronic pain, no whatever.
Yeah. What do you
And
want for dinner?
yeah,
That's, that.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'll be able to communicate that I want, pasta for dinner. Like, yeah, I
And even
see
that's hard, right? Like, that's even hard.
100%. I
And
see a
so
lot of couples lately, and I don't know if it's because of the pandemic. Stay tuned. There'll be another time discussion when there's more information. But lately, I've been meeting with a lot of couples that like are blowing my mind, girl. Because I'm there being like, yes, how can I help you? And they're like, have never had any deep discussion about things like children, finances, how they're going to set up their relationship, what are their goals in life. And I'm like, y'all have been together for a minute. And this is not just one case. This has been over the last, I want to say, definitely 6 months, maybe a year. I've been working with people in this space, in this couples realm, that it's like, wait, if you're not even talking about these quote basics, how are you going to talk about something that's got some shame, listen to me, a lot of shame surrounding it? And it just blows my mind. So we are not doing ourselves any favors, unfortunately.
Well, I think one of the things that comes to mind when you talk about that is, we never used to have these conversations because everything was there, like the normative. So if you think back to 200-300 years ago,
Mm.
communities where people lived, in just their community and didn't really travel outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't need to have these conversations because everybody knew what was expected and everyone fell in line. And maybe there were a couple outcasts in that community who went against the grain and they were outcasted. And other than that, if you stayed in your community, you knew exactly what was expected of you.
Mm-hmm.
Come in globalization, which has its pros in so many ways, also brings in like just an overwhelming amount of different cultures and a different nonverbal languages as well as verbal languages, and so much difference that our brains just don't know how to wrap our heads around it. And so this should come with learning how to communicate. If I'm not going to automatically know about you because you're not in my community and we didn't grow up together and all of that, then I should at least have the communication skills to be able to ask you questions, listen reflectively, and have these conversations, but we aren't taught how to do that.
Right.
So we have evolved past these kind of like small communities where we didn't have to ask these questions and we're not learning how to ask them.
Well, the idea of control pops up for me, where it's like what you were describing. It sounds like, people were in line because what else were they going to do? Like there was this
Yeah.
control aspect. And now we're out here, we have access to so much, but use so little. It's wild. And it's about like, you want to be able to follow your community, cultural, societal, whatever, but people are smarter now, kind of. Asterisk with that. People have more access to different ways of being. And I also think about like how we're teaching young people, not just about sex, but how to be in this world. And it's all about I'm gonna call it the state, but I don't necessarily mean like states, but like how do we control people, to be the workers that we want them to be? Because humans are messy and humans are not always the nicest in the world. But like, why is it now a problem? Well, because we're not embracing vulnerability. We're not being taught that it's okay to tell someone, it was great meeting you. It's just not working. And we don't know what to do with the rejection. We don't know what to do with the emotions that come up on both sides, because it's hard for both individuals, whoever's in the system, to say like, this isn't working. But we don't have these like fail safe ability, these communal abilities to one, go to our people and be like, oh, this sucks, I got broken up with. And then even internally be able to navigate all the complexities of that. So
yeah, I think we don't have the communication tools, and then oftentimes we just don't know what we want either. So we kind of spend some time like, okay, I need some time to process and to think. But then there's also so much in this world that takes our attention away. And so while I think sometimes ghosting is extremely intentional, I think there are other times where like you kind of like put the response on the back burner and then it just keeps going and going and going. Right. And before you know it, like it's been too long. So we need to take accountability for that. But I think that we just don't know enough about our own needs and wants in order to actually say, this is what I like, this is what I need. And again, chronic pain and chronic illness, it's even harder because even if you've had it your whole life, so you have a whole lot of experience with it, you probably don't have a whole lot of like role models around you who are teaching you how to speak about that in that like that particular illness. Or
I think about the cultural aspects of that. Like you just grin and bear it. Don't say anything. Don't talk about your problems. Or, I think about my community and it's just like, what the facade, like you need to like look and be a certain way. So everything's kind of, again, shrouded in this darkness, even though you're like, I don't know how to navigate any of this. And it's like, no, we're not going to talk about that. Like, no, just keep a good smile on and keep going and you'll be okay. And it does make things harder, right? Because life is already hard. But then you add this chronic illness, chronic pain, and it's like, oh, now I'm supposed to be able to, one, navigate life in general, but then I got this added situation that no one is allowing me to talk about because, quote, it makes them uncomfortable. Or, we just don't talk like that. It's super wild. It's hard. It's frustrating. And I'm going to be pro therapy for a hot minute. And if y'all are listening, I hope you have been pro therapy this whole time, because like therapy is a space for you to navigate that safely without feeling whatever cultural elements might be holding you back, or misinformation or fear or anything. Like therapy is that place to just be like, look, I'm dealing with this. Support me through it. Let's walk together on this journey and figure it out together because, I need help.
Yeah. And culture has so many different components, right? It could be your ethnicity, but it could also be just the mere fact that you have a chronic illness and the particular disease that you're dealing with. There's a cultural component in that way too. So how important do you think it is for the therapist to have some real lived experience with the culture that the cultural aspects that a client is bringing into session?
Well, I'm super biased because of my multicultural background, but then also because of the clients that I do work with. I'm very honored to be working with multicultural clients as well, predominantly in the Latinx community, but I've worked with people from all over the world, different religions. So for me, the heartbreaking part of my job as a professional is hearing that clients have gone to other clinicians and, they didn't know, like they didn't have the cultural competency to actually support the client, or this is a new one, they use that client as an experiment. And I was like, barf, like that is just, nope, that's not what we do. Therapists are required to do CEU training, which is continuing education training, consult if you need support, or refer out if it's just not your jam. Like, I don't know if I could work with like evangelical Christians at this point, because I don't have that competency. I wouldn't know where they're coming from. I wouldn't understand. So I would refer out because that's appropriate. I don't think clinicians should be taking on clients just because they can or they need to eat. That's a whole nother problem, y'all. Let me just say that. That's a whole nother thing. That's another talk for another time.
I mean, that's what we're taught, right? Like we're taught, like you go into, you take on whoever comes to you and you kind of are a martyr in that way. And so there are a lot of therapists right now who I think still feel really icky about like specialization. But my experience has always been that the more specialized I am, the more I can help that particular person. I can take CEUs and I can at least not do harm and not just like be asking them all the questions and you just explain to me so I can understand. That's not what therapy is about.
it's different saying like, I want to know you, the person, the client or the clients. I believe that a clinician should be well-versed. And we kind of had this conversation before we started recording, where someone recently came to me and was like, hey, I want to do anger management. And I was like, well, person, I have done that, but it's not my specialty. I specialize in sex therapy. I specialize in healthy relationships. I specialize in exploration of kink and entity and all of that. So when they said that, I had to be very honest. And I'm glad that they went in a different direction, because though I could have done it, it would have probably been painful for both of us. Because it would have been, I needed to go do some research, and I mean, that sounds like I'm lazy and I don't want to. That's not what I'm saying, you guys.
No, but is this what
yeah.
you were speaking to when you said like some therapists experiment with their clients?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I would have had to like piecemeal a treatment plan, rely heavily on my consultation groups and the other clinicians that I have in my life. I would have to go back to the research and read books, and like it would basically be like go to mini school for something that like somebody who organically does that, who already has that knowledge base, could go and work with them. And I think like bringing it back to chronic illness and pain, we were talking too, like how does it relate to sex therapy? And it really does, because a lot of the, like, maybe I want to say close to 50% of what I do with clients is because there's some pain, there's some quote dysfunction. I don't like that word, but that's what we're going with. Quote dysfunction, that we have to bring in other professionals like urologists, like dermatologists, like gynecologists, to help, sort out the physicality to it. And then us as therapists, go and, support the mental aspect of whatever's going on.
Yeah. I think that, not everybody has to have like some ultra specific specialized niche. But if you're going to work with a population that requires that, then you do have to have that.
Yeah. And you also asked the question of like, does the client, or excuse me, clinician and therapist, y'all, basically the same thing. Clinician is like you do clinical work, meaning you see the clients, which is what I do. And I think that's what you do as well.
Yep.
And so you asked if there needed to be any like personalized experience. In school, they say that it helps. So you have that like empathy and like just ground level understanding, but kind of, I feel like it doesn't matter. And hear me out. I'm gonna walk this fine line, because if you're doing your job as a clinician and therapist, then like, you don't have to have that exact experience to have empathy and compassion and to guide a client through healing. You can like, I mean, it kind of helps, like it kind of is nice, but also I kind of feel like, well, you got to be very careful then, because if you have the experience, you don't want to put your shit on the client's shit. And so
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You don't want to put your biases or your
experience and think that they're going through that same exact
Exactly.
in the same way. So there's pros and cons for sure.
So I almost think it's a little harder, but like some people can navigate it flawlessly.
I think that
some people can't.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like if you're going to specialize in something that you have lived experience in, you still have to have that consultation. You still have to have your own therapy. It is.
You know what I always say? I'm going to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. I always say, never see a therapist that doesn't see a therapist.
Yes. I mean, you have to be able to sit on the other end of the couch and know what that process feels like. And I think what's more important is not so much if a therapist has a lived experience, but how comfortable they are with the topic. I think it's the discomfort. For me, I think the lived experience is what helps me then be more comfortable in the situation. But like we just said, lived experience can also make you more uncomfortable in certain ways. So yeah, it's about knowing yourself. Like you have to be hyper aware of your own internal thoughts and motivations and automatic behaviors and things of that nature. Yeah. But it's about your comfort. Because I think a lot of therapists are really scared of touching chronic illness because it's body based and it's like, well, that's outside my scope of practice. And it's not
so interesting you say that, because as a sex therapist, I was actually just having this conversation with my sex therapy consult group. And I have always thought that sex therapists should be like doctors, like medical doctors. And you know what? If they ever change the law, or they're like, therapists need to take these courses and sit for this exam, I'll be the first in line to try to get my MD that way, because we are already kind of specialized to use the quote medical model.
Right.
I need to know things about the body. I need to know about reproduction. I need to know about that stuff in order to help my client. And some other clinicians in other areas probably do something similar, but I've always thought that sex therapy was one of those areas that needed to work hand in hand with the medical community. And so
Yeah.
why not give them specialized training? Like, hello. And so my consult group actually brought it up and said the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone. So there are some clinicians that do fear that, because they don't feel like that is their lane, or their like you said, the scope of practice. But I think for sex therapy and pain management in any way, you kind of have to use the medical model, not in the disconnect from client kind of way. When we say that, that's what some people think, but in the way that, like, I have this particular set of skills and knowledge to help the people out.
Yeah.
I have to know that in order to help you.
It's why having an interdisciplinary team is so important. Although also, I mean, it can be highly inaccessible to have multiple specialists. It can get quite expensive for sure.
100%.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard dealing with so many different intersections, but I think that's why it's important to have these conversations, and to have people willing to just learn. Like, we just have to be willing to learn. I think that's something, I think in a world of specialists, I think that is also an issue. Is like, we all feel like we have to know like everything about this particular niche or this particular thing. And
well, I mean, that's what school does for you, right? It kind of already sets, I don't know where you went. I went to Mercer University School of Medicine, and I feel like they definitely push for specialty, but it was like specialty light, they were like, you should probably have one. But for the most part, it was like, and I'm glad, because I think every new clinician should have the foundation. But in school, you get kind of like taught that, like, you should know it all. But now that I've been in private practice and out in these streets for almost a decade, that sounds like so long. I feel like, no, I don't know if I could do it all at this point. Like, I just want to do what I know how to do, because I've spent so much time doing it. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
and I think the biggest thing, it's like, we're not taught, even as therapists, I mean, we are taught how to ask open-ended questions and things of that nature, but the medical professionals are we're all even everyone in this country, like, we just feel like we have to know this thing, and it stops us from asking questions, when really, if you want to become an expert, all you should be doing is asking questions.
You know what's so funny? I went to a conference once. What was it? I think it was AMFT, American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists conference here in Atlanta. And I remember going to, like, what do I want to call it? Wasn't a panel. It was like somebody's presentation. And the gentleman was like, who was also a therapist, he was like, all we do is ask questions. And I was like, what? No, I don't ask questions the whole time. That's silly. That's what is he talking about? And it stuck with me until the following week. I started doing therapy back up. I went to work, obviously. And it must have taken like less than a half a day. And I was like, oh my God, that guy was right. All I do is live my life asking questions. And from that realization, flash forward to today, I just, even when somebody asks me if I want fries, do you want fries with that? I'm like, well, I'm not sure. What are the fries? What kind of fries? Like, I just find myself, it's a poor example, but I find myself just like regurgitating more questions. Like, one, it's part of our training.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to do. We want to answer you, but like, we really can't, because it's your life. But then we do this work for long enough, and like, you find yourself going, oh my God, all I'm doing is asking questions. But you should. It's a beautiful trait. It's a good gift to give yourself and others. Like, just learn to ask more questions. Okay.
Yeah, the asking questions piece is so important. I mean, we were talking earlier about just like knowing yourself and being able to then communicate that to your partner. And I think even within that, you can ask open-ended questions in order to further figure out what is right for the both of you. I mean, you had mentioned earlier, it's like, there's what's right for you, there's what's right for the partner or partners, and then there's what's right for the couple as one unit.
Yeah.
And that takes time to figure out. Like, I think you had mentioned, people being together and still not even like broaching these topics. And we kind of talked about a little bit about why that might be. But again, in the past, in these communities, people they had their whole life to like learn what is expected, or what they wanted or what they didn't want.
I don't even know if we can like understand what it would be like to not have access to the internet or books, because so many people back then were illiterate. They didn't have access. And now that we do, I think we have some kind of choice. I'm put asterisk on that. Y'all, I'm very like, what do I want to say? Like rebellious. Okay. So that's why I'm putting an asterisk on it. Cause I know there's like positionality and intersectionality we to be aware of. But back in the day when you just lived in these small communities, like you're saying, and you didn't have access, you didn't cultivate critical thinking. Well, you did in like your own way, a way that we probably could not comprehend in 2022. But like, we all have our own different views. And I think it's hard to kind of comprehend that back in the day, we didn't have access. Therefore, our thoughts were, I don't want to say smaller because that's disrespectful, but like that kind of idea that they just kind of stayed in a general vicinity. You didn't have access to like wider pastures, if you will. That makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes
disrespectful.
No, I think that there's like everything, there's a balance. And I think at one point the balance swung way too far on one end, where there was like no diversity, no ability to go outside the box. And then as globalization started creeping in, I think there was more opportunity to travel, and people would come back feeling, having being so much better for that experience. And, but I do say we've swung all the way to the other side, and you have to be really careful. This is why we talk so much about like things like social media detoxes and stuff like that, because it is toxic to hear 100, you can literally scroll TikTok and hear 100 different people talking in an hour, 100 different opinions.
Well, unless your algorithm's fucked up, then they're the same opinions.
Then it's the same. That's right.
I miss the days of dogs and funny videos and dances. Now I'm just getting like more political stuff. I like it, but at the same time, I have to be wary myself, where it's just like, it's supercharged. It's supercharged in one situation, or, God forbid you get on what they call the wrong side of TikTok, define that as you will. And they're like, I'm on the wrong side of TikTok, help me. And you're like, wow, that sounds scary. I don't want to go there either. I mean, I help you, but like, that sounds so scary. I don't want to be on the wrong side of TikTok.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, for sure. Like the algorithm can keep you in your own small bubble. That is also a thing.
Yes.
But yeah.
Oh, you know what? I just thought about something that's on topic, but a little off topic. But I swear to God, I'm gonna make it make sense in a minute. We're still talking about pain, and so full disclosure, you guys, I not only work with it, but I have what's called interstitial cystitis, which is like bladder pain syndrome. So it's like having a UTI all the time. Thank the Lord above that I have managed it and figured it out, and I'm so grateful. But man, it sucks, especially when there's flare-ups. Oh Lord, it sucks. Anyway. So when I first got diagnosed, I was in Tampa, Florida. And then I moved to Atlanta like a hot second later and met my urologist. She kicked me out, y'all. Like, she was like, you're doing so good. We worked together for 5 years. You got to go, be free, run off into the sunset. I'm like, okay, but I'm gonna call you if I got a problem. She's like, yes, please call me. Anyway, but when she first came on the scene, bless her, she was like, I need to tell you something. So it sounds so dramatic when I say it like that, but she was like, I need to tell you something. And I was like, what? What? I'm like sitting there, my head is spinning already. And I'm like, okay, I got to learn how to eat again. And like, what triggers me? And like, will this medicine work? Will this situation work? Da, da, da. She's like, whatever you do, don't go online. And I was like, what? And she's like, do not go to the community boards. Do not go find your people on the line, because it's terrifying out there. And I was like, whoa, I'd never had a doctor talk to me like that. I had never had that kind of insight. And then, me, I had to go look. I had to. I was like, why? But I knew it was going to be ugly. But I was like, I still want to know, because you don't want to be alone on this chronic illness journey. You do want to find your people. You do want to find others like you and listen to like the good stories and bad and all of that. But holy shit, she was correct. It was so sad there. It was so scary. And you just want to cry. You just want to go find that person saying all the things and just give them a hug. But I bring that up because as much as we are like, yay, TikTok and dances and dog videos and yay, community, it can get dark real fast. And then where are you? You know, I don't have anything at the end of this story besides be careful, use your best judgment, know your boundaries, and just be wary that like, and I'm blanket stating this. So Destiny, please let me know if you feel the same. That like humans don't go online all the time to be like, gosh, life is sunshine, rainbows. Oh, look at this. Look at this picture of this cake. We do that on occasion, but a lot of times, especially today, I think, I'm not, that's not my area of research or expertise, but it feels like a little bit more heavy where people go to talk about the bad in life or talk about their big emotions like that. So you want to be careful how much of that you're consuming, because God forbid it impact how you see yourself and your situation and what's going on with you. I've heard some really good things about people like me with interstitial cystitis, and I've heard some really god awful things, right? That's life. But if you get stuck in one way or another, I'm just sending you the best. We want to manage that. We want to use our boundaries, and we want to use our best judgment when it comes to interacting online in those types of spaces.
I think the idea of using your boundaries is a perfect piece of advice because it can get really scary really fast. And I think there are also a ton of really healthy, positive accounts, but I think people also even get sucked into like I cured my illness with this supplement or diet thing. Yeah. And so even the positive ones can also make you feel really shitty inside if that doesn't work for you too.
And not that I have like a major following online. I'm not saying that in one way or another, but like, that's why I don't personally talk about my journey. I say that I have it. Well, I haven't really openly talked about it in a hot minute, and I'm going to have to reflect on why. But I know there's definitely a blog post on my website, samanthaheuwagen.com, in the show notes. And I know that I have talked about it and like, stories and like very short, what do I say? Like things that don't last forever. But I know there's definitely a blog post or two about my chronic illness. But other than that, I will not say what. I'll tell you the doctor that I went to. Her name is Dr. Janelle Foote. She's amazing. She's in Midtown Atlanta. Love her team. Amazing. But I will not say what worked for me or not, because I feel very fortunate and lucky that I've managed it, but I've managed it the Samantha Heuwagen way. Not everybody should do what I do, because not everybody has my body. That would be stupid.
And I kind of want to swing that concept back into sex and sex therapy. And yes, like at the beginning, we talked about defining sex. And I will say, I do know that there are going to be some people who hear that and think, I don't want to hear that. I just want to know how to have penetration without pain.
Oh yeah. I don't want to do the homework. I want to skip a few steps. Like, come on, girl, where's your magic wand? I'm like, oh Lord. Yeah.
I think it's just because it's so ingrained in us that like that is, and if I might get a little bit, I don't even know the word here, but especially in heterosexual relationships, like I just need to please my man. Right. Mm-hmm. And so like, I don't know. Is that something that comes up for you in your work with clients?
Oh yeah. All the time. I was just thinking about a case when you were saying that, where it's just like, they want to fast forward the work to get to the reward. And I'm like, I got nothing for you. And I like how
you're calling it like work and reward. Well, I like it and I don't like it, because I think the work actually makes, maybe especially with chronic pain and chronic illness, it's like it makes me a little bit like weary of like delving into that. But like everything in life, like there is a process that happens before you get to this end result. And truly literally with every single thing, what my goal for my clients almost always is how do we help you enjoy the process? The outcome is just like a little gold star that like happens and so ejaculation is just the little gold star that happens at the end. Like, how can we enjoy
And it
this
doesn't even have to
process?
happen, right? Like, yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
you're
thank
right.
you for clarifying that. That's
Poor,
important.
poor language on my part. 1,000 apologies. But so to answer your question, that's the vibe. However you want to say it, is that's the vibe, where it's like, I want to pass through and just get to where I think I need to go. And I'm like you, where I'm like, but like, what if that's not even where you need to go? Or like you get there and you're like, oh, there's still more to do, or, whatever that looks like. Let us work together to find things that we can do depending on where you're at, whether that be emotionally, mentally, or physically. Like, let's create this toolbox together so you can go out and like see what works and what doesn't work. Because like another thing I should have said at the beginning that I failed to mention, because I felt so safe here, was that so many people think a sex therapist is a sex worker. We love a sex worker, bless them. That's not it. We are literally doing therapy, but with a focus on sex and sexuality. So I don't want to see my clients do anything. That would be very inappropriate and unethical. They don't need to send me the porn links. Oh, look at this. No. I find myself saying all the time, I got a great imagination. She wrote some books. She's proven it. Like, she's got a great imagination. I don't need to see anything. I want my clients to go and experience it and enjoy themselves. But I don't need to physically see anything. Sometimes I will need more details. Like if they're like, this didn't work. I don't want to get too vulgar, but this didn't work. Okay, walk me through how you did it.
Right.
Walk me through what do you mean it didn't work? I once worked way back in the day. I worked with a gal that said, I have pain here. And she literally, this was like OG practicum time. She put her hand over her.
For those who don't know, that's internship.
Oh yeah, internship. Yep. Mm-hmm. Clinic. She put her hand over her pelvic area. Well, y'all, have you ever seen a female looking body? There's a lot going on there. So I was like, I don't know. So we had to ask questions. So I just want to clarify that, like, when I give homework to clients, or, we gather stuff to put in their toolbox, it's for them to do the work outside. And I saw this really nice thing on TikTok, of all places, that people were like, this was another clinician out in the wild that was like, therapy is once a week, usually for 50 minutes. The real work is what you do outside of that 50 minutes. And that's my point here. It's like, I'm here with you as the guide on the side, coming up with ideas, seeing if they fit, seeing if they don't fit. What did you come up with? And like seeing what works and what doesn't, and what we can do better or do, change. Anyway, I just had to say that. Like, I don't want to see nothing.
Yeah.
No ethical sex therapist is going to do that. There are things called sex surrogates. Oh, that's another, let's bring that up. So if you have pain, illness, there are people, now I don't believe there are any currently, unfortunately, in Georgia. If there are, let me know. There was one, but I do not think she's working anymore. A sex surrogate can come in and help you. There will be sexual activity depending on what's going on. But there are individuals out there, I don't want to call them sex coaches, because sex coaches are not, how do I want to say that? They're not, some of them have training, many do not. They come from that camp. If I had sex one time, therefore I can tell all the people how to have sex. Ooh, golly. It's very scary, but there are surrogates and professionals that can help you hands-on. That is not a sex therapist. We do talk therapy.
Good distinction. Yeah, I think that's important. Is there anything else that you feel is important for people to know? I think the biggest thing I got from today's episode is continuing to make sure people always come back to the basics and the foundations, which is communication, and know that if that's hard for you, that's okay. And that's normal. And that's what we're here to help with. Is there anything else that you think is really important, especially around the chronic pain piece?
There's so many, and I know, like you said earlier, like there's so many avenues of helping professionals in this space. It's really about finding those that you feel comfortable with, and those that have your niche needs. That's really paramount, because if you come to a sex therapist It's almost like I kind of consider us like the hub. Like we're the people that are like, okay, let's go find you a physical therapist. Let's go find you a sex surrogate. Let's go find you a doctor. What kind of doctor? We need a urologist. Nope, we need a gynecologist. We can be the hub, but there are other professionals if therapy seems like too much or it's not the right time or probably possibly not even the right issue. There are other trained professionals that do want to help you. I know the medical community is messy these days. I know that we all get a bad rap. We are doing the best we can. The system sucks. Let's just call it what it is. The system sucks, but there are people. And I always say that if you have any questions, concerns, or whatever, I'm always here to take those and help you find a professional in your area. Now, I'm not going to say that's to all medical situations, but I can definitely help you find a therapist in your area, especially a sex therapist in your area. So never, ever hesitate to reach out. And you can find me all over the internet at the Sci-Fi Therapist. So don't
I
be
love
afraid.
that. So helpful. Thank you so much, Samantha. And I'll put all of that information in the show notes and people can reach out in that way.
Thanks. Yeah.
Awesome. If you learned something new today, consider writing it down in your phone notes or journal and make that new neural pathway light up. Better yet, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram, email me, or leave a voice memo for us to play on the next show. The way you summarize your takeaways can be the perfect little soundbite that someone else might need in order to better absorb the same lesson. Lastly, leaving a review really helps others find this podcast, so please do so if you found this episode helpful.